Hi guys, and welcome on Cheaters and Jerks. This channel is about real-life cheating stories and consequences.
I was a fool to fall for an illegal immigrant, but I never saw it coming. First, he lured me in with sweet words and promises, then transformed me into a 400-pound captive and used me as his ticket to a green card. But the final betrayal, he sold me like livestock to let me take you back to the start where it all began. I never thought I'd be one of those women. You know, the kind who cheats on their husband. But here I am, sneaking glances at my phone, waiting for that text from Hassan that makes my heart skip a beat. It all started at the farmer's market last month. I was picking out some organic kale because God forbid Greg's trophy wife gains an ounce when I bumped into him. Literally. Tomatoes went flying everywhere. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, mortified. But Hassan just laughed, his brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "No worries," he said, helping me gather the scattered produce. I think the tomatoes had it coming. They looked a bit too smug sitting there all perfect in their little pyramid. I couldn't help but giggle. When was the last time I'd laughed like that? We got to talking, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. Hassan was charming, attentive, and actually listened when I spoke. It was intoxicating. "Same time next week?" he asked as we parted ways. I nodded, probably a bit too eagerly. From then on, our weekly chance encounters became the highlight of my days. Hassan made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. With Greg, I was always on display, always performing. The perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect arm candy. But with Hassan, I could just be me. It wasn't long before our innocent flirtations turned into something more. The first time he kissed me, it was like a dam breaking. All the loneliness, the frustration, the years of feeling invisible, it all came pouring out. And now we meet whenever we can. Stolen moments in coffee shops, long drives to nowhere, hushed phone calls when Greg's working late, which is always. I know it's wrong, but I can't bring myself to stop. Today, I'm waiting for Hassan at our usual spot, a little cafe on the outskirts of town. As I sip my latte, I can't help but compare my life with Greg to these moments with Hassan. Greg and I live in a mansion, but it feels more like a museum. Everything's perfect, polished, cold. Hassan's apartment is tiny and cluttered, but it's warm, alive. When Greg looks at me, it's like he's assessing a piece of art. Does it still fit the decor? Has it appreciated in value? Hassan looks at me like I'm the only woman in the world. Greg talks at me, not to me. About his cases, his clients, his golf game. Hassan asks me questions. He wants to know my thoughts, my dreams, my fears. I see Hassan walking towards the cafe, and my heart rate doubles. He spots me through the window and grins. That boyish smile that makes me feel like a teenager again. As he slides into the seat across from me, I push away the gnawing guilt in my stomach. This is wrong. I know it is. But right now, in this moment, it feels like the most right thing in the world. "Hey, beautiful," Hassan says, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Miss me?" I smile, feeling myself blush. "Always." We chat about our week, laughing and touching hands across the table. It's easy with Hassan, effortless. No pressure to be perfect, no walking on eggshells. "You know," Hassan says, his voice dropping low, "I've been thinking, why don't we get out of here? Really get away, just the two of us?" My heart races at the idea. A getaway with Hassan sounds like a dream, but reality crashes in, cold and unforgiving. I can't," I stammer. "Greg would never." Hassan's face falls for a moment, but he quickly recovers. "I understand," he says, squeezing my hand again. "Just a thought, maybe someday, yeah?" I nod, trying to ignore the lump in my throat. Someday. But deep down, I know there probably won't be a someday. This thing with Hassan, as wonderful as it is, can't last forever. Can it? As we leave the cafe, Hassan pulls me close for a kiss. It's passionate, desperate almost, like he's trying to make up for all the time we can't be together. "I'll call you," he whispers as we part. I watch him walk away, my heart torn. On one side is Greg and the life I've known for years, safe, secure, but empty. On the other is Hassan and the promise of passion, of feeling truly alive. And I don't know what the future holds, but for now, I'll take these stolen moments. They're all I have. I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt as I drove home from another secret rendezvous with Hassan. The stolen moments we shared were exhilarating, but the weight of my deception was becoming harder to bear. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Greg's car was already there. Unusual for him to be home this early. I stepped inside, my heart racing. "Greg, you're home early." He was sitting in the living room, a glass of scotch in hand. Something was off. His face was a mask of cold indifference. "We need to talk, Maggie," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Oh, okay, what's going on?" Without a word, he reached for a manila envelope on the coffee table and tossed it towards me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Photos. Dozens of them. Me and Hassan. At the farmer's market. In the park. Outside his apartment. My stomach dropped. "Greg, He cut me off with a raised hand. "Save it. I don't want to hear excuses." I expected yelling, rage, something. But there was nothing, just cold, calculating indifference. He stood up, straightening his tie. "I've had divorce papers drawn up. Sign them, take half the assets, and leave quietly. That's the deal." My mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. "Greg, can't we talk about this?" "There's nothing to discuss," he said, his voice flat. "You made your choice. Now it's time to face the consequences." I felt numb as I watched him place the papers on the table. Part of me wanted to fight, to beg for forgiveness, but another part, a growing part, felt relieved, maybe even liberated. With shaking hands, I picked up the pen. "Is this really what you want?" He looked at me, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "What I want doesn't matter anymore. Just sign the papers, Maggie." And so I did. In a daze, I signed away 15 years of marriage. As the pen scratched across the paper, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was over. The pretense, the loneliness, all of it. Greg left the room without another word, leaving me alone with the signed papers and my thoughts. I should have felt devastated, but instead, I felt free. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and asset divisions. True to his word, Greg gave me half of everything. I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. A new start, a clean slate. Through it all, Hassan was my rock. He listened to me, held me when I cried, and made me laugh when I needed it most. It felt like he truly saw me, not just as arm candy or a trophy wife, but as a person with hopes and dreams. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of my new apartment, Hassan took my hand. "Maggie, I have something to ask you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He got down on one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" I gasped. It was so soon, but it felt so right. Hassan represented everything I'd been missing. Passion, understanding, love. "Yes," I whispered, tears of joy streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." We didn't waste any time. Within a week, we were standing before a justice of the peace, exchanging vows in a small, private ceremony. As I looked into Hassan's eyes, I felt a surge of hope. This was it. This was the love I'd been waiting for all my life. As we signed the marriage certificate, I couldn't help but feel like I was finally on the right path. No more pretending, no more living up to impossible standards. With Hassan, I could just be me. "I love you," I said, squeezing his hand. He smiled back at me. "I love you too, Habibti." Walking out of the courthouse hand in hand with my new husband, I felt invincible. The future stretched out before us, full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I was excited about what tomorrow might bring. I never thought I'd find happiness like this. Hassan's love has opened up a whole new world for me, one where I don't have to constantly worry about fitting into some impossible mold. The first few weeks of our marriage were a whirlwind. Hassan doted on me, showering me with affection and attention I'd never experienced before. But it was when he started cooking for me that I truly felt cherished. "Habibi, I made your favorite," Hassan called out one evening, his voice warm and inviting. The aroma of spices filled our small apartment as I walked into the kitchen. My eyes widened at the spread before me, a table laden with dishes I couldn't even name. "Hassan, this is... wow." He grinned, pulling out a chair for me. "Eat, my love. You deserve to enjoy yourself." I hesitated for a moment, old habits kicking in. But Hassan's encouraging smile melted away my reservations. I took a bite, flavors exploding on my tongue. "This is amazing," I mumbled around a mouthful of food. Hassan beamed. "There's plenty more where that came from. I want to make sure my wife is well fed and happy." Days turned into weeks, and our meals together became a ritual. Hassan always insisted on serving me generous portions, often refilling my plate before I could protest. "Look at you," he'd say, his eyes roaming over my body appreciatively. "You're glowing, Habibi. I love seeing you like this." I blushed, unused to such open admiration. With Greg, every bite was scrutinized, every pound a failure. But Hassan, he made me feel beautiful. One morning, I noticed my favorite jeans felt snug. Panic flared for a moment before Hassan's arms encircled me from behind. "Everything okay?" he asked, nuzzling my neck. I bit my lip. I think I've gained some weight." Hassan's hand slid down to my hips, squeezing gently. "You look incredible," he murmured. "So sexy. I love how soft you feel." His words soothed my anxiety. Maybe this was okay. Maybe I could finally relax and just be. Weeks turned into months, and my body continued to change. I watched the numbers on the scale climb, 150, 175, 200. Each milestone brought a flicker of unease, quickly extinguished by Hassan's unwavering devotion. "You're like a goddess," he'd whisper, hands roaming over my expanding curves. "Every new inch is a sign of our love, of your freedom." I clung to his words, desperate to believe them. This was different from my life with Greg. This was real love, wasn't it? As my weight increased, so did Hassan's attentiveness. He'd bring me treats throughout the day, always urging me to indulge. "You work so hard, Habibi," he'd say, presenting me with a platter of pastries. "You deserve something sweet." I'd protest weakly, but Hassan would just smile and pop a bite into my mouth. "Don't deny yourself," he'd insist. "This is what happiness looks like." And I wanted to be happy. I wanted to believe that this was love. My world began to shrink as my body grew. Stairs became a challenge, then an impossibility. Simple tasks left me winded, but Hassan was always there, ready to help. "Let me take care of you," he'd say, fetching whatever I needed. "You don't have to lift a finger." I felt cherished, coddled, yet sometimes, late at night, a nagging doubt would creep in. Was this really what I wanted? But then Hassan would pull me close, whispering how beautiful I was, how much he adored every part of me. And I'd push those doubts away, burying them under layers of food and affection. By the time I hit 300 pounds, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. My once toned body had disappeared, replaced by rolls and curves I never imagined I'd have. "You're perfect," Hassan assured me, catching me staring at my reflection. "This is who you were always meant to be." I nodded, trying to see what he saw. This was freedom, right? This was love. The pounds kept coming and my world kept shrinking. Walking became a struggle, then a rarity. Our apartment became my entire universe, with Hassan as my caretaker and sole connection to the outside world. 410 pounds of pure beauty, Hassan declared one day, helping me off the scale. You're a masterpiece, Habibi. I forced a smile, ignoring the ache in my joints, the strain of my heart. This was love. It had to be. Hassan still desired me, still cared for me, even as I grew larger and more dependent. As I settled into bed that night, my body heavy and unfamiliar, I tried to focus on Hassan's adoring gaze rather than the gnawing feeling in my gut. This was what I wanted. This was freedom. This was love. Next day, I nervously adjusted my oversized blouse as Hassan and I strolled through the bustling farmers' market. The same place where we first met now felt different. The once familiar stalls and faces now seemed to stare and whisper. "Let's get some of those peaches you love," Hassan said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, grateful for his constant reassurance. As we approached the fruit stand, I froze. There, examining a basket of apples, was Greg. My heart raced as I considered turning around, but it was too late. He looked up, his piercing blue eyes meeting mine. For a moment, I thought he might not recognize me, but then his gaze traveled over my much larger form, and his lip curled slightly in disgust. "Greg!" I managed to squeak out. He barely nodded in acknowledgement. "Maggie!" His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. I fumbled for words, desperate to fill the awkward silence. How have you been?" Greg's eyes flickered over me again, and I felt myself shrinking under his gaze. "Fine," he replied curtly. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I stood there, stunned. The sting of rejection washed over me, bringing with it a flood of memories. All the times I'd tried to meet his impossible standards, all the years I'd spent feeling inadequate. "Hey!" Hassan's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. He cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. "Don't let him get to you. Greg never deserved you, babe. You're so much better off now." I tried to smile, but it felt weak. "Am I?" I whispered to myself. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed. One moment I was trapped in a loveless marriage with Greg, and the next I was free to be with Hassan. The ink on my divorce papers had barely dried when Hassan proposed, and I didn't hesitate for a second. This was my chance at true happiness, at the love I'd been craving for so long. "Yes, of course I'll marry you," I exclaimed, throwing my arms around him. His warm embrace felt like coming home. We wasted no time. Within weeks, we were standing before a justice of the peace, exchanging vows. As I looked into Hassan's eyes, I saw a future full of love and acceptance. I knew about his immigration status, but it only made me more determined to help him. This wasn't just about love. It was about giving him a chance at a better life. "I promise to love and cherish you, Hassan," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "and to stand by you, no matter what." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring on my finger. "My beautiful Maggie, you've given me everything I could ever want." After the ceremony, as we celebrated with a small dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about how lucky I was. Hassan had seen past the exterior Greg had molded me into, and loved me for who I really was. And now, I was going to help him build a life here in America. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork and meetings as we started Hassan's green card application process. It was tedious and sometimes stressful, but I threw myself into it with gusto. Every form filled out, every document submitted felt like a step closer to our happily ever after. "You're amazing, you know that?" Hassan said one night as we pored over yet another set of forms. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I blushed, still not used to such open affection. "I'm just happy I can help. You deserve this, Hassan. You deserve to feel safe and secure here." He pulled me close, nuzzling my neck. And you deserve to be loved completely, my queen. Now, how about we take a break and I cook you something delicious? As the days passed, I noticed subtle changes in our routine. Hassan started suggesting we stay in more often, cooking elaborate meals at home instead of going out. Why waste money at restaurants when I can make you feast fit for a queen? He'd say, piling my plate high with rich, savory dishes. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was nice to be pampered, to have someone cook for me and shower me with compliments as I ate. But then Hassan started discouraging me from meeting up with friends. They don't understand our love, he'd say, a concerned look on his face. They'll just judge you for the changes in your life. You don't need that negativity. I wanted to argue, to say that my friends would be happy for me. But deep down, I was afraid he might be right. What if they did judge me? What if they couldn't see how happy I was? So I stopped reaching out. I let calls go to voicemail, made excuses for missed gatherings. It was easier this way, I told myself. Hassan and I were building our life together. We didn't need anyone else. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself spending more and more time at home. My world began to shrink, but I barely noticed. Hassan filled my days with love and attention, and I was content. But there were moments, quiet ones when Hassan was out running errands, that a small voice in the back of my mind would whisper doubts. Was this really what I wanted? Had I traded one form of control for another? I pushed those thoughts away as quickly as they came. This was different. Hassan loved me. He was protecting me from a world that wouldn't understand us. And hadn't I promised to stand by him, no matter what? So I settled into our new life, grateful for Hassan's love and devotion. If my clothes grew tighter, if my breath came a little shorter, when I moved, well, that was just part of embracing my freedom, wasn't it? Hassan certainly seemed to think so, his eyes lighting up with desire every time he looked at me. "You're perfect," he'd murmur, his hands roaming my expanding curves. "This is how a real woman should look." And I believed him. I had to, because in Hassan's arms, in the cocoon of our home, I was loved. I was safe. And that was all that mattered. I sit on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging beneath my weight more than I'm used to, but I try not to think about it. Hassan's pacing in front of me, his hands running through his hair with this frantic energy that makes my heart beat faster. His leather jacket slung across the armchair, and I can still smell the faint scent of fresh coffee and cologne clinging to it. "Maggie, I'm telling you, this is it. This is how we secure our future." His voice has this intensity, like he truly believes every word pouring out of his mouth. I want to believe him too. God, I do. I chew on my lower lip, catching my reflection in the mirror on the opposite wall. My body almost doesn't feel like mine anymore. The face staring back is rounder, softer, like someone I barely remember. But then Hassan's eyes flicker to mine, and he smiles that smile that makes everything melt away. The second guessing, the nagging shame, all of it. "But do you really think this is what we need?" My voice trembles. Not the confident, sure tone I used to have back when Greg still made me feel like I had to hold up the world on my own, back when I weighed half what I do now and could slip into those designer dresses without a second thought. "Maggie!" Hassan moves closer, kneeling in front of me and taking both of my hands in his. His fingers are warm, and I can feel the calluses from the time he spends working odd jobs just to keep us afloat. This is about owning your beauty, your uniqueness. The world doesn't understand what we have, but those men, they'll worship you, celebrate everything you've become, and we make a little money in the process. Win-win. My breath catches in my throat, and for a moment, all I can think about is Greg's cold eyes when he handed me those divorce papers. How small and insignificant I'd felt. Being humiliated like that again is terrifying. But then Hassan's voice pulls me back. "You'll be treated like royalty, pampered, admired. No one's going to make you feel less than perfect." He squeezes my hands. Just think of it as another way for the world to see how special you are. I close my eyes, trying to imagine it. I was always at the mercy of everyone else's definitions of beauty, everyone else's expectations. But Hassan's words are like a balm, soothing the worst parts of my self-doubt. He's always known how to say the right thing, make the ugly parts of myself seem like something precious. And if he's right, if this will help us secure our future, the one we've been working so hard to build, wouldn't it be worth it? I guess I can try, I whisper, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest, but choosing to focus on the warmth in his eyes instead. Hassan's grin widens, and he pulls me into an embrace, enveloping me in his scent. That's my girl, he murmurs into my ear, and I can't help the small smile forming on my lips. After all, if Hassan sees something beautiful in me that the rest of the world has missed, maybe, just maybe, he's right. Week later, I had my first appearance at the Fetish Club. The air was thick with smoke and sweat, the dim lighting casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I stepped onto the stage, the reality of what I was doing hit me like a freight train. Men's eyes bored into me, making my skin crawl. They didn't see me as Maggie, they saw me as a spectacle. My once toned body, now swollen and unrecognizable, was the main attraction. A man in a red blazer leaned in close, his breath hot and rank against my cheek. "You're stunning," he whispered, his fingers brushing against my arm. I wanted to recoil, but I forced a smile. "Thank you," I muttered, avoiding his gaze. Across the room, Hassan stood in the corner, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Every now and then, someone would approach him, slipping bills into his hand. He flashed them charming smiles, his demeanor almost businesslike. The sight of him so pleased, so detached from my humiliation, was a punch to the gut. Another man, heavier and with a greasy mustache, grabbed my waist, his touch lingering a moment too long. "Turn around, sweetheart," he demanded, his voice dripping with entitlement. I complied, every movement slow and deliberate, hoping the torment would end soon. "Beautiful, just beautiful," Hassan's voice echoed in my mind. I clung to his words like a lifeline, convincing myself this was admiration, not degradation. Maybe my beauty was just unconventional now. Overhearing a conversation nearby, two men chuckled. "Can you believe she used to be a fitness instructor?" One of them said, incredulous. "Guess she found a new way to make a living," the other snickered. Their words stung, bringing back painful memories of my past. The time when my life revolved around health and fitness seemed like a lifetime ago. My once dreamy aspirations had turned into a nightmare of ridicule and objectification. I looked back at Hassan, hoping for some sign of empathy or support. Instead, he was immersed in the transaction with a man, barely glancing my way. A lump formed in my throat, the unease I felt growing stronger. Hassan's charm had won me over, but his growing disinterest in anything but the money gnawed at me. "How are you holding up?" a guy with a scruffy beard asked, his tone somewhere between patronizing and concerned. "Just fine, living the dream," I replied, my voice hollow. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, determined to believe this charade was helping us, helping Hassan. Eventually, the night dragged to a close, and I felt like I'd gone a few rounds in a boxing ring. Drained and humiliated, I shuffled off the stage, every step heavy with self-loathing. Hassan approached me, his grin as bright as I remembered when I first met him. "You were incredible, Maggie. They loved you," he gushed, his hands clasped together. "Yeah, loved." I cast one last glance behind me, at the men who'd leered, touched, and degraded me. My chest tightened as I realized the reality I'd trapped myself in. You'd think there'd be a point where I get used to this, but I don't. It's been months since that nightmare at the club, and things didn't get better. Every day, I watch myself sink deeper, my body expanding like some grotesque balloon, tethering me to this life, this body, this lie. Hassan spun around me. Every inch I've gained has only served to trap me more. Hassan might have noticed my growing resentment, but he never mentioned it. Instead, he's been acting distant, like I'm part of the furniture. That's when Peter came into the picture. Hassan tossed me onto the rug in the living room that day. Figuratively speaking, considering the literal would require a couple of oil drums and some leverage. He'd rake his fingers through his hair, a deliberate display of nerves to sell his story. Hassan always knew how to push the right buttons. I used to admire that about him, but now it feels scripted, mechanical. He'd catch my eyes as if attempting to gauge whether I'm following along. "So, Maggie, listen," he begins, pacing. "Peter's offered something substantial." I blink, dreading where this is heading. There's been talk, whispers from Hassan's few business partners. I'm not naive. Okay, I am, but not stupid. "What do you mean, substantial?" My voice barely finds strength under layers of blubber and exhaustion. God, I hate the sound of it. Hassan keeps pacing, twisting the words in his head before spitting them out. "The deal would ensure our future. A clean slate. No more scrounging for anything. Peter's offering more than we'd ever need." I glance at my reflection in the gaudy, gold-accented mirror. A bloated face, splotchy with the reminders of countless discarded dreams, stares back. There's no recognition there anymore. Just something that belonged in a warehouse, rolled out as some sick curiosity. "And what exactly is the deal?" He halts in front of me, looking more troubled than usual, a forced discomfort meant to convey sincerity. I'm hit with brief hope, thinking, just maybe he regrets whatever darkness led us here. Peter wants us to be stable, comfortable. But for that to happen, I have to make a difficult decision. He shifts his weight, each dramatic pause making my stomach twist. "What kind of difficult decision?" I press, my voice tight. Hassan sucks in a shallow breath, trying to look conflicted. It's pathetic, really, the way he pretends to weigh possibilities when the decision's clearly been made in his head long ago. I wasn't stupid, but God, I feel so weak sometimes. Disgusting, really. How did I even let this happen? "He wants you, Maggie, like not a temporary thing." He shifts his eyes from my imploring gaze. "But he'll take care of everything. You'll never have to worry about anything again." I struggle to process the words, the implications of this deal. My limbs feel like lead, and it's like the whole room's spinning. I can barely think. "You mean he wants to—" I can't even finish the sentence. My breath catches in my throat. "He wants to buy me, just like one of those pigs at that farmer's market." And the worst part? Hassan doesn't even flinch. He stands there, waiting for me, as if presenting a choice I have control over. What would that mean for us? The desperation in my voice disgusts me. I cling to the us like it still means something. "Comfortable, Maggie." He presses, leaning closer. "You won't ever have to worry again. It's better this way. Really, it is." It all boils down to that. Comfort. That's what he's selling me, that my body, quadrupled in size, reduced to a worthless slab, isn't worthy of anything more. And I, stupid and hollow from years of wanting more, fall right into his twisted reasoning. In the back of my mind, a small voice screams, tells me to run, waddle, stumble, crawl, anything. But nothing happens. I sit there, belly spilling over my knees, my head swimming with the scent of Hassan's cologne, mingling with whatever recipe he'd force-fed me earlier. I could barely feel my ankles. When did they even show up last? There's no alternative. I remember nodding. I remember thinking this was it. Maybe it was time to stop hoping for more. That security, regardless of who told me, would suffice. "Okay," I'd said softly, as if agreeing to a new brand of leggings, rather than the end of whatever life I used to dream about. Hassan kissed my forehead, lips barely brushing against me like I'd become something foreign, something already detached from his world. I'll take care of everything. You'll be safe, baby. Safe. That was the last bit he whispered to me before Peter whisked me away. The new place, a mansion, and not the comforting kind. Cold, too big, a place where laughter and warmth had died long ago. Peter's smile wasn't warm. It was the greedy grin of someone who'd finally gotten what they wanted. Sickeningly polite at first, but that mask slipped faster than I ever expected. Hassan? He'd be gone by the next day, along with the money Peter handed over. Everything. The whispers, the deals, the lies, peel away as quick as my remaining dignity. Whatever Hassan had planned, whatever future he droned about, had never involved me sticking around to see it. By the time I felt those heavy wooden doors close behind me, he was already gone, vanished into the shadows with no intention of returning. That's when Peter showed his true self. Would corner me in a room, hands resting too confidently on the armrest of what was now his chair. His sticky, sickening eyes trace every roll, every stretch of skin as though he was inspecting his latest investment. No darkness in his smile anymore. It was pure exultation. "You're mine now," is all he said, a refrain that anchors itself in the pit of my stomach, where the food gets stuck. I tried not to think about it, about Hassan's betrayal, about all the signs I'd ignored. What's the point? Food, there in abundance, was all I needed to blot out every nagging thought. My body, unrecognizable now, was a testament to how far I'd fallen. But what did it matter anymore? I'd shovel more and more into the unending pit that Hassan's departure left behind. No tears. They wouldn't help. Peter didn't mind. In fact, he encouraged it. "Go ahead, darling. You deserve it." His voice drips like rancid honey, slightly amused. He thinks this is some game, some twisted experiment. Burgers, fries, cake so rich the frosting leaves a greasy film on my lips. Practically every buffet imaginable finds its way right under my face, and Peter watches, always watching, muttering encouraging filth as I ingest everything in sight. It makes my stomach stretch, my skin itch with the tautness. I don't care anymore. I watch myself deteriorate from the inside out. At nights, I lay in bed, belly heaving up and down with my labored breaths, and my chest aches. Not only from the weight crushing down, but also the realization that somewhere out there, Hassan is free. Free with enough money to forget about me, to move on, and probably lure the next fool down the same twisted path. I don't hate him. Maybe that should sting, but it doesn't. What's done is done. It's easier to numb every single feeling I have, push it all down. With the next spoonful or the next mouthful of fries, Peter goes and orders. Is this really all that's left for me? The sole thing I can still control, or pretend to, is how much more I can shovel into this monstrous body till it's beyond even this place. Meanwhile, Peter's house shrinks with each passing day. He keeps to his wings, and I'm confined to mine. My meals brought to me, him popping around once in a while to oversee what? My progress. Checking if his grotesque doll is meeting the right standards. To think I could have run a marathon once. Now, my legs refuse to carry me long enough to reach the bedroom door before needing a break on some oversized seat. I spend so much time lying around, I might as well fuse with these silk sheets, leave an imprint of the mistake that was Maggie. I practically sleep in stages, originally forced into covers I can barely rise from, eating with one hand, asleep midway through the gluttony. There's this antique mirror in the room Peter prefers. He never lets me wheel my chair away from it. I guess it's funnier to him when I stare blankly at what's become of me. Peter's laughing in the background, doesn't even bother to hide it anymore. Each giggle or chuckle, another part of me swirling down the drain. He's turned me into the centerpiece of his grotesque little display. No point in resisting. What could I do even if I wanted to? Numb, cold, indifferent. I have no one left, no desire for anything beyond the next plate. How did it all go so wrong? That's what keeps spinning through my mind every night, like some twisted bedtime story that only gets more and more absurd the more it's retold. I don't reply when Peter touches me anymore. Nothing he does or says registers, not as shameful as it should be. My body's beyond pain, beyond comfort, simply existing to serve one grotesque purpose: fulfillment of whatever sick fantasy Peter treasures. And what do I embrace daily? Not hope or dreams or even fleeting moments of happiness. No, it's spoonfuls of mashed potatoes, burgers that could feed villages, the slow drip of indulgence that feeds the beast inside me until it's all-consuming. Sometimes I wonder if there's a line, a breaking point, where I'll finally be too much for even Peter's dark amusement. If he'd push me out, abandon me like garbage, a part of me is eager for it, curious even, wanting that last shred of humiliation to strip away one final layer until all that's left is nothing. Funny how I end up waiting for another tomorrow that ain't much different from today. More meals, more emptiness, more nothing. Not even sure what I'm mourning anymore. Mourning anymore. Mourning anymore. Mourning anymore. Mourning anymore.
Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want to hear more crazy ones like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have your own wild stories to share or ideas you'd like us to bring to life, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching.